You're listening to XVGM Radio. Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Mike.
And I'm Justin.
And you're listening to episode 33, Sega Dreamcast.
Insert a, streamer and horn noise and be like, Happy birthday, Dreamcast!
Yes! The day that we are releasing this is the 20th anniversary of the Sega Dreamcast, 9/9/2019. It's been 20 years. The Dreamcast was released on September 9th, 1999. I don't know about you, but I remember exactly where I was.
No, I don't.
You don't? No.
No.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that in just a few moments. So today, we are going to be celebrating the Sega Dreamcast. This is our birthday gift to Sega, to the Dreamcast, and to all the fans out there who are fans of the Dreamcast, fans of that era of gaming. It was a very specific era of gaming that was very memorable for a lot of different people. So it was a very interesting time for gaming.
It was a good generation too, as far as the console wars go.
Oh, for sure.
But I know, just think next year your Dreamcast can drink.
Yeah, that's true.
I wouldn't suggest putting any alcohol in it.
No, don't pour any alcoholic beverages in your Dreamcast. We have a ton of fantastic tunes to listen to. There was a lot of stuff that we wanted to pick from, but some of it is licensed, so we weren't able to use that.
That was the hardest thing about this episode.
Yeah.
Crazy Taxi, come on.
Yeah.
Everything in Crazy Taxi is great, but it's all
licensed music.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's so much good stuff.
But regardless, I think we've picked a lot of major hits, and then we've picked some stuff that's a little bit more obscure, so I think it's going to be
deep cuts in there.
Yeah, some deep cuts. So I think it's going to be an interesting topic of conversation to have. We wanted to also take a moment to mention that our video game music podcast buddies, Rhythm and Pixels, Rob and Pernell, they are doing a Dreamcast Spotlight celebration for the birthday of Dreamcast as well. So go and check out their podcast. It released today. So that is at rhythmandpixels.com.
Yep, so if you are just joining us to listen to more Dreamcast music from their podcast, welcome, we hope you enjoy. And if at the end of this you have not heard theirs and you'd like some more Dreamcast to listen to, head on over to either their website or check them out on any podcatcher and continue the celebration of the Dreamcast birthday.
For sure. So we're going to get started with just talking a little bit about the Sega Dreamcast, giving you some details and kind of bringing you back to that era. And then maybe later on we'll share some personal stories of our own.
Yeah. So first, let's travel back 20 years.
Yes.
The release date, as Mike said earlier, was September 9th, 1999. That was in the U.S., right?
Yes. Today's episode is going to be mostly a focus on the U.S., the United States, North America, because that's when it was released on. That's what makes it the 20-year anniversary. This system was released the previous year in Japan.
Right.
So it was released in 1998, and it was released with only 4 games. So they really kind of stepped it up for the release.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that.
Yeah. So the price point of the Dreamcast was $199. That was Sega's marketing. They dubbed it $99.99 for $199. So that's pretty fun there. Another little tidbit about this is it was announced on the MTV Music Awards.
Oh, yeah.
Another personal story. My wife's birthday is on September 9th. So I always am like, yeah, you were born and all, and that's great, and I love you and all, but the Sega Dreamcast was released on $99.99.
Well, I will say it's a really easy way to remember your wife's birthday.
That's true. It's true. And our anniversary is on the Famicom release of Metroid coming out. So I somehow lined up greatness.
You lucked out.
Perfection, clearly. By the time the system was on its way out of the market, it had dropped to $100.
So about half price.
Yeah.
So we just mentioned the launch titles when it released in Japan. In America, when it released, there was a ton of launch titles.
18 games.
18 games.
Wow.
So just to, let me try to go through these so y'all know.
One of the best launches ever.
Yeah, right? They had Kart Flag to Flag, Hydro Thunder, Tokyo Extreme Racer, Aero Wings, Air Force Delta, Trick Style, Blue Stinger, NFL 2K, Mortal Kombat Gold, Power Stone, Ready to Rumble Boxing, TNN Motorsports, Hardcore Heat, NFL Blitz 2000, Sonic Adventure, House of the Dead 2, Soul Calibur, Pen, Trislon, and Monaco Grand Prix Racing Simulation 2.
Now, I believe that all of those... Yeah, I know, it's a mouthful. I believe that all of those were within the launch window. So some of them may have not come out right.
Yeah. They may not have been available on 999.
Right, but I believe that most of them, or a good chunk of them, were.
Yeah.
So lifespan for the system was from November 27th, 1998 until March 31st, 2001. That's when the console was announced as no longer they're not making games for it anymore, they're retiring. Production ended for the console on November 23rd, 2001. And the final licensed game to be released in the US was NHL 2K2, which came out in 2002.
Right. So we focus a lot on music and stuff here. So the sound hardware on the Dreamcast, it had a 67 megahertz Yamaha AICA with 32-bit ARM7 processor, which had a RISC CPU core that had 64 channels of sound just in this one processor. The Yamaha AICA Super Intelligent Sound Processor is a Yamaha sound processor released for the Dreamcast console and Sega NAOMI arcade systems in 1998.
Right.
I feel like we've talked about the Yamaha AICA.
We might have
in the previous episode.
I think so, but what I definitely can tell you is that we briefly touched on NAOMI. And the NAOMI hardware on the Dolphin Blue episode.
Yep.
Yeah. So NAOMI stands for New Arcade Operation Machine Idea. This NAOMI hardware succeeded the Sega Model 3 arcade hardware, and while the Dreamcast used similar hardware, NAOMI on its own is more powerful than the Dreamcast. NAOMI was later succeeded by NAOMI 2 hardware, and that's where a lot of games were put onto the NAOMI 2 hardware, a lot of shooters and shmups.
Yep.
And some of those ended up coming out or getting downported to the Dreamcast later on in like semi-unofficial releases. We've talked before about games coming out way later in the lifespan of a console, and the Dreamcast is still getting games released, but it's by like unofficial companies like Josh Prod and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Dreamcast had the ability to play all sorts of things that you could put into it. Like,
sure,
you could burn games, and not that we support that. But yeah, I remember in college, one of my friends had a Dreamcast, and they had this CD that they'd pop in and then they'd swap it out, and it was an NES emulator, basically.
Yeah.
So you could play NES games and stuff.
Yep.
It's really neat.
Yeah, yeah.
So the Dreamcast was the first console released with a built-in modem for online games.
Yep.
I remember that because I had a friend who played the Phantasy Star Online games.
That's right. There's a little bit of mix-up on as far as how many millions of units were sold. Like, I read in one place 9.13 million units were sold. I've read in others like 11 point something were sold for a million units. I don't know. I mean, I looked up a couple sources, but
units like the Dreamcast units.
Yeah, Dreamcast units. Right. It was the first console to have Windows built into it, and it ran Windows CE behind the scenes.
Oof.
Yeah,
that's why it died.
The benefit of that was that it made PC games easier to port.
Right.
But devs ended up preferring Sega's development tools anyways. Yeah.
Neat.
So Dreamcast is a pretty unique system, and we're going to be talking about it throughout this episode. And I guess we'll briefly touch on the track that we played, what we came in on, that was Sonic Adventure 2. And the track was Escape from the City for City Escape. It's by Fumi Kumitani, Tomoya Otani, Jun Senue, Kenichi Tokoi, and it had Ted Poley on drums and with lyrics by him, as well as Tony Harnell on vocals.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like this track needs virtually no introduction.
Yeah, no, it's a very... But we wanted to pick a hit.
Yeah.
And while I could have went with Sonic Adventure because that was my first owned Sonic game, I wanted to go with something that I think was a little bit more.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this one of the other times a couple weeks ago when we were recording another episode, and we were talking about what are we gonna come in for the intro on Sega Dreamcast, and I was just like, if we don't come in on Escape from the City, I don't want to do the episode.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean,
so
I'm totally joking, but I like the fact that we agreed on it.
Totally.
It's so iconic.
It's such a great song.
I hear the song and all I can think of is the Dreamcast. Like, I understand that the game was ported to the GameCube and everything else, but it started here, and it's just it's such a good song.
It puts a smile on your face.
Yes.
It's this awesome hard rockin'. It's like borderline pop punk almost. Especially
I would call it pop punk. Yeah,
you would.
definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially just with the opening of that do 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 do.
Yeah, like
that bass opening.
Love that
awesome.
funky bass, and it's just a really great hard rockin' track. So, my first experience with Sonic Adventure 2 was actually on the GameCube. So even though I owned a Dreamcast, I got Sonic. I totally skipped Sonic Adventure 2 because I played the first one and was like, I was like, it's okay. And then I played the second one and was like, I really like this game. I actually really like Sonic Adventure 2.
So you skipped Sonic Adventure 1?
No. I got it when it came out. So I'll talk a little bit more about my personal history with the Dreamcast later. But Sonic Adventure 2 I totally missed.
Gotcha.
On the Dreamcast, unfortunately. So
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So I got it on the GameCube under the moniker of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle.
Oh, Battle.
It was called Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. They had added some additional content and stuff, so that's why I guess I could consider it a port of the game. I know we're not really talking much about it. We're not mentioning it right now, but it was not much of a significant change. I know they did retweak and retool some of the camera and some of the levels and stuff, so they did kind of change things around a little bit to improve the game because Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, when they both released, they did have some problems with cameras and controls and stuff like that a little bit. But so I don't know. Sonic Adventure 2 added in a bunch of new characters like Rouge the Bat and
Shadow was in.
Shadow.
Okay.
Shadow, yeah. It was Shadow the Hedgehog and Rouge the Bat. So those were the two new characters that they added.
And the guy who sings Pumpkin Hill.
I love me some Pumpkin Hill. That's such a goofy track.
It really is.
It is. So that is it. So as far as the composers go for this one, Fumie Kumatani, she worked on a lot of Sega stuff, starting with Nights into Dreams in '96. Worked on both Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. Later on, worked on the Sonic Advance games series with Sonic Advance 3, Sonic Unleashed, Knight's Journey into Dreams, Phantasy Star Universe, Ambition of the Illuminous, and final game was 2010's Sonic Colors for the DS and the Wii.
Tomoya Otani started doing sound effects in Chu Chu Rocket, a game we'll talk about maybe a little bit later. Went on to do more sound effects in Skies of Arcadia 2000. Let's get into this music stuff. Music and lyrics in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, as well as Sonic Adventure 2 in 2001. Space Channel 5 Part 2 in 2002. And then went on to do a lot of sound effects sound directing in games like Astro Boy in 2004. Came back to do music composition on Sonic Rush Adventure 2007, and let's get something a little more recent. So it looks like they stuck with Sega overall, because I see them here on Sonic Colors in 2010, doing music composition, music direction, and composition in Rhythm Thief and The Emperor's Treasure in 2012. That is a fun game with some really nifty music.
Agreed.
And then just to wrap up, Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympics 2016, and lastly, Team Sonic Racing in 2019 did music composition.
That's right. Jun Senue has been a longtime Sega employee, starting with Sonic the Hedgehog 3 in 94, was part of that conglomerate of composers for that one. We're going to jump way ahead. Worked on NASCAR Arcade in 2000 as the music composer. Yakuza 4 in 2010. They did interpretation and assistance. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 in 2010. I'm going to jump way ahead because we have a lot to go through. They are the composer on Team Sonic Racing, which came out this year in 2019. He's the lead composer on that. He's part of the band Crush 40, which, tours and plays Sonic music and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. And then we have Kenichi Tokoi. Started out doing music and remixes on Daytona USA Deluxe in 1996. Sonic Riders in 2006. Coming around in 2010, they did music composition on Yakuza 4 and more similar stuff. They did music composition on Sonic Colors in 2010. Their most recent game, they were an additional composer in Sonic Forces in 2017.
Ted Poley is the drummer and also the lyricist for this track. He's like an American rock singer and drummer. He's also worked on several other games in the Sonic the Hedgehog series. He's done tracks like Lazy Days, Living in Paradise on Sonic Adventure. Of course, this track that we just listened to, as well as We Can from Sonic Heroes, and also Race to Win from Sonic Rivals 2.
So Tony Harnell is another musician that's done work for the Sonic series. He's probably best known for being the frontman for the 80s heavy metal band TNT. Mm-hmm. His history is actually very similar to Ted Poley. They work together very closely on a lot of stuff. So he's performed a lot of Sonic series songs, including It Doesn't Matter, We Can, and Race to Win, like you just mentioned.
Right.
He returned for Sonic Generations to perform remixes of Escape from the City with Ted Poley, actually.
Yep, and that's it. So that is Sonic Adventure 2, and then we're going to get into our next track, which is from a game called Trick Style. This was a launch game that came out on the Dreamcast as well as the PC in 1999. It later came out for the Mac and Linux computers in 2017. The track is called Japan Race 3, and it's by Richard Badow. Welcome back. That was Trick Style, which came out for the Dreamcast and the PC in 1999. That also came out on the Mac and Linux in 2017. That track was Japan Race 3, and it was by Richard Bedow. Or Bedow.
Or Bedo?
Or Bedo. Yeah, one of those three.
Yeah, you know. Somebody tell us how to pronounce that name.
Yes.
Anyway.
So, Trick Style is a launch game that came out for the Dreamcast, and it is kind of like a futuristic SSX.
I was gonna say I remember this game vaguely, and I feel like it was a snowboarding game.
Kind of, yeah. It's a lot of fun. I dig this music though. Like
Definitely
super trance, progressive trance.
Yep.
It's just that's my jam, man. Like especially like I'd say a couple years after this game came out is when I really got into like progressive trance and electronic music, EDM. So I really, really dig this genre of music. It's just, I like how it builds, you know what I mean? And it just like grows and builds the track and you hear new things. It's always changing, but it still has that consistent backbeat. Sometimes you'll get like time signature changes in there too. It's really unique and fun to listen to. And I love the use of the vocals. I mean, like, yeah, you've probably heard like the weird moaning chick vocals.
I was going to mention that
in most trance and techno of the late 90s. But what I really like that they did with this is they kind of made it almost like a Middle Eastern kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, the quality of the voice and like the sort of notes or sliding through notes that she's doing.
Very similar to Piano 3, which came out on the GameCube.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of tracks on that soundtrack do something similar, and I like how the vocals kind of like got all like robotic and like changed like like they did a lot of like that stuff with the vocals. It was really cool.
It's really neat. And no, I appreciate this track for the genre of music that it is, like techno and trance and all that stuff, as we've said a million times before, is very much in my wheelhouse, in my like house. But the background percussions, just like this, so that that's persistent throughout the entire track, adds sort of this like mellowness to it, because there's no real harsh beats or harsh sounds that come out of this. Yeah, and it's just like you said, it flows really well, and I like the way that it sort of like evolves and changes. It's like an amoeba. For better or for worse, and I would say for better. I like where it starts and I like where it goes.
I agree. So this game really was very similar to SSX. They tried to make like all the characters like really wacky and out there and far out. Tried to make them all like super like hip and late 90s, early 2000s vibe. You know, they got like that snowboard, you know, I'm too cool kind of atmosphere to them. So that's the vibe that I get. I think SSX did it a little better. I think this is more like a generic version of SSX as far as that goes.
Maybe.
But, you know, regardless, I think that the characters still have, you know, some personality and, you know, still make the game enjoyable to play.
I mostly remember SSX, specifically SSX Tricky,
yes,
for its soundtrack.
Absolutely, yeah. All the stuff aside from the Run DMC track were really good. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, right on par with stuff like this. Like awesome, like electronics. So the composer on this, Richard Bedow, I'm just gonna say Bedow, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. He started off with a game called Natural Fawn Killers in 1999. That's interesting. I guess it's like a PC game where you hunt. Then followed it up with a game called Deep Fighter in 2000. Also did Star Monkey in 2001, Art is Dead in 2001, then later on jumped to do Tato Legends 1 and 2, the sound design on those. Then
Potato Legends?
No, Tato Legends.
Oh, Taito?
Taito?
T-A-I-T-O?
Taito?
Potato
Legends.
Legends.
Yes. Every single game is just full of potatoes.
Yep. No, it's a shmup, and you are a giant potato that shoots smaller potatoes.
And at potatoes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Of course. Excellent game. 5 stars. Then started working on the Total War series, and he's pretty much been doing that ever since. His latest game was Total War Saga Thrones of Britannia in 2018. He was the audio director on that one.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, let's move into your first pick. What do you got for us?
All right, so I am going to play a track from a game called Fur Fighters. This came out on the Dreamcast, PS2, and PC in 2000, and iOS in 2012. The track is called Vigo A Go-Go, and it was composed by Nelson Everhart and Michael Pummel. Welcome back. That was Vigo A Go-Go from Fur Fighters, which came out on the Dreamcast, PS2, and PC. All three of those released somewhere between 2000 and 2001, and came out on the iOS in 2012. The track was composed by Nelson Everhart and Michael Pummel.
Yes.
Or Pummel, one or the other.
I've never played this one, so
Yeah.
you'll have to fill me in.
My wife actually owns this game.
Okay.
And the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, it's... it must be like a fighting game where you just play these like weird cutesy animals.
Sure.
If you look on the case, it's got like a bear dog looking thing shooting a gun at like a cat thing with a gun. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't really sure what to make of it. But
cutesy animals shooting each other.
Yeah, or beating each other up or something.
Okay.
But it is a third-person shooter game, actually, that revolves around a group of anthropomorphic animals called the Fur Fighters, and they're dedicated to fighting against this guy named General Vigo, hence Vigo A Go-Go is the name of the track, because it's about him, and he's the main antagonist throughout the entire game. But at the beginning, Vigo kidnaps the families of these Fur Fighters, stranding their children around in various locations, so basically you're going around rescuing these family members,
getting
trying
the kids
to get back together, and so you can play as different characters throughout the game. One of the kind of nifty things about this game is you can play as pretty much any character in any level, and the music is different. So like there's a base music theme and there are character themes. So for every level, they combine the base music theme for the level with the character's theme.
Oh, okay.
So every level is unique, has like a unique track for each character.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah, it also made the game really hard to rip. Apparently there was like a big fan conglomeration to figure out and actually get the music ripped for this game because the way that the game put the music together was not like most other games.
Right.
But it's pretty neat. It's pretty cutesy. It did okay as far as like scores go. I think it's at about like a 75 to 80% rating throughout most of the
above average, basically.
Yeah. Well, so I think 75 is average.
Average to above average.
Yeah.
So it's like middle of the road to slightly above.
Yeah. It looks like it should have been a launch title to me.
Really?
It came out fairly early on, but it looked like something that would have been a launch title. Like not that it looked bad, I think it looked a little unpolished.
Okay.
That's about it.
Yeah, I know they re-released it on the PS2 and they kind of upgraded it, changed some things, that seems to be the case with Dreamcast. I think what happens is the developers who made games on the Dreamcast, they later take their assets and ended up moving them over to like the PS2, the GameCube, the Xbox, and even some unreleased games that Sega was working on when the Dreamcast flopped or failed or retired, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And they ended up bringing a lot of those projects like Gun Valkyrie, Toe Jam and Earl 3, anything that Sega was working on at that point in time. I think Spike Out as well.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think we played in the Beat 'em Ups episode. So a lot of those projects got moved over from the Dreamcast over to the Xbox, and a lot of them still used the NAOMI hardware. So it's just one of those things. But with Fur Fighters, it was made by a third party. It wasn't made by Sega, so I think a lot of companies just were like, all right, well, we got all these assets for these games that we've created. We need to still make money on them. How can we make money off of these properties? And they ended up moving them over to a system that had a little bit more exposure, like the PS2. So
Right.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the track, though? I mean, obviously right off the bat, you get a very sort of like James Bond feel.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is James Bond. This, it's really cool because around this time, which we'll be hearing throughout this episode, there was a little bit of a musical callback to the 60s, the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of that kind of era of horns and disco and funk. Funk. A lot of the TV shows that were coming out around that time were definitely huge inspirations, like that 70s show.
I was going to say,
Starsky and Hutch got a new game that came out. There were other shows like the Mod Squad and all that stuff. Austin Powers. A lot of that era was kind of coming back. Very similar to the way that 80s and 90s have been coming back for the past 10 years from our generation.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the 60s and 70s. I remember growing up, in that time, and I was in high school, and so to see that kind of era come back, a lot of people during that time were, wearing like Led Zeppelin shirts and wearing like, Pink Floyd shirts in high school and stuff like that. So it was cool because I got to explore that type of music and that era that I didn't grow up in. It was really cool.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like I remember either like late middle school, early high school, bell bottoms trying to make a comeback.
Yeah. Bell bottoms, definitely.
So unfortunate.
Yeah, but I definitely get a James Bond vibe or an Austin Powers kind of vibe.
Yeah.
This also reminded me a lot of Conker's Bad Fur Day, the track where you're gonna rob the bank. Where you're playing the multiplayer game.
Yeah. That's really funny.
Where that guy's like, "You are my number one," like. So good. Love that game. But
my number one guy. different movie, but
different reference.
But actually, it's funny because like some of the characters look similar to like something out of Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's no correlation there. Yeah.
No. I just think
pure coincidence.
They were thinking QT.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So these composers.
Yeah. So Nelson Everhart has been around for a little while. Started out doing music and sound effects on The Crow City of Angels in 1996.
Oh, that was a bad game.
Yeah. I mean, at least he didn't quit after that, right? Did a lot of composition, actually. NFL QB Club 2001, which came out in 2000. All-Star Baseball in 2002. A lot of sports game I'm seeing here. Was a lead composer on Vex in 2003.
Oh, yeah. I remember that game.
and most recently in 2012 did music on Pirate 101, which is like an online MMO. There's a Wizard 101 and Pirate 101. It's like a kid's game, a kid's MMO. It's very, very, very simplistic, very kind of cutesy.
Yeah.
And then Michael Pamel, I don't know how it's pronounced, but I like saying it Pamel, so hopefully that's right. Started out doing arrangements and performances for Mission Impossible in 1998. That was the PlayStation game published by Ocean Software. Then Legends of Wrestling 1 and 2 in 2002 did music and additional themes. Did music composition on Heritage of Kings, The Settlers in 2004. And their final game for music and sound design was Imagine, Fashion Designer World Tour in 2009.
Very cool. Well, it looks like we are getting a phone call on the request hotline. So let's go ahead and take that call. Janine, can you forward that call over to us, please?
Caller, you're on the air with XVGM Radio. Who's this?
Oh,
usually we get requests for music, not music on the line.
Yeah. This is cool.
What is this?
I'm grooving to this. Oh, I recognize this song. This is Mexican Flyer.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of songs from the 60s and 70s.
Seriously. Good stuff.
So, thank you very much for that lovely music.
Yeah, musical interlude.
Musical interlude with all a cappella all the time. Nice. So, that is a very clear sign that we need to play a track from Space Channel 5, one of my favorite games on the Dreamcast. This came out on the Dreamcast in 1999. It was re-released on the PlayStation 2 in 2003. The track is Spaceport Introducing Ooh La La, and it's by Naofumi Hataya and Kenichi Tokoi, and the original track, Mexican Flyer, is by Ken Woodman. back to XVGM Radio's Dreamcast celebration. That was Space Channel 5, which came out on the Dreamcast in 1999, later on in the PS2 in 2003. The track was Spaceport, introducing Ooh La La, and that was Naofumi Hataya's track along with Kenichi Tokoi, and it was based on the original Mexican Flyer track by Ken Woodman.
Yes.
Yeah, so almost every single, or most songs on Space Channel 5 utilize Mexican Flyer, which was a track that Ken Woodman released way back when in like the 60s. I believe it was a 60s track. So
yeah, I knew there's a lot of like sort of remix and stuff in there.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was mostly based around that one song.
It's like a motif.
Yeah. I
for the most part.
Yeah. That's really cool though.
Yeah.
I really like the entire sound here.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very big band, very like 70s disco, like
funk.
Yeah.
70s funk, definitely combined with like that big band era.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's some of my favorite stuff in this track is the big band, just like the horns. Really, the horns are awesome.
And the
they're
saxophone.
rocking it. The saxophone's really good too.
Yeah.
The horn stood out more to me.
Yeah. I mean, once you get that saxophone in there, it becomes more of a jazz type style track.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about the saxophone, but when you throw it in any song, it pretty much turns it into like a freestyle. So, and the song kind of kept with that too, though. It kind of flowed with the rhythm of the saxophone. So it's not like it kept doing the same thing it was doing. It did kind of move along with it. So it's a great introduction to the game. It's a great introduction to Ooh La La, who is the main character of Space Channel 5. If you've never played Space Channel 5 before, how dare you go out and get it. The best way to play it, other than just the original on the Dreamcast, is get it on the PS2. You can get 1 and 2, which were released together in a compilation on the PS2 for fairly cheap now. It's like $15 or so, last I checked. That's how much I picked it up for. I had played the original on the Dreamcast when it came out, and I completely fell in love with it. I love rhythm-based games, rhythm games, and music games like that. It was just kind of a win-win to have like a corny space adventure with, reporter, the space reporter, basically reporting what's going on in the world or in the galaxy.
Yeah. I'll admit, I actually missed this one when it first came out. A lot of the early rhythm games I just kind of skipped over, which having gone back to them, later in my life, I was like, what was wrong with me? Like, I didn't really get into rhythm games until, I was going to say Guitar Hero, but I guess DDR. Yeah. When DDR got big, I was sort of already into DDR when it blew up, but not like I was a trendsetter. Like, I maybe a little bit before it happened, because some friends were really into it, and then everything else just kind of exploded from there. And then it was years later that I have a friend who's also very much in love with Space Channel 5 and Ooh La La and everything, and he brought out his Dreamcast and we played it, and I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's super fun. The voice actress for Ooh La La is a woman named Apollo Smile, and she's actually a Connecticut resident.
Really?
Believe it or not. Or she currently is, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
But they've been trying to get a hold of her forever to reprise the role for the latest VR game that came out. But
nice.
They could not find her. Sega and whoever the development company was were trying desperately to reach her. But she has no email, she has no Twitter, she has no Facebook. She's basically a ghost online. There's been a couple articles about her, but her voice is just super iconic. She was apparently a singer as well. And she put out some albums in like the 90s, I believe. And she was also the host of the anime hour or anime movies during Sci-Fi Channel. Back in the day when Sci-Fi Channel in the late 90s, when they were showcasing anime. Those. And like doing research for this episode, I watched a couple like clips of Apollo Smile, and they basically like dressed her up like an anime character, like super tight clothes and like the jumpsuit, really like prepped her for the role of Ooh La La, if you will.
Yeah.
And it was just really funny because you hear her voice and you're like, that's Ooh La La, like that. I cannot unhear that voice. So it was really kind of neat to see that in action. So maybe we'll post some throwback clips to that. I know it's not exactly related to the Dreamcast, but it's still kind of related to Space Channel 5.
No, I would say it is.
Yeah.
That's
it's pretty neat.
It's unfortunate that they can't get a hold of her. I'm wondering if maybe she just doesn't want, like maybe she just wants to be out of the public eye. In which case,
think so.
You got to respect that.
Yeah, I heard something like, she like had like some family that she was taking care of, like some sick parents or something like that. And so I had heard a rumor that she moved back home. She became like a school teacher. She had a dance studio or something like that.
She pulled a Rick Moranis.
Yeah, pretty much. Hey, you got to respect that. You know, to come out of the limelight and to go back home, back to your roots. So, I think that was a smart move for her to make. But, we do miss you, Apollo Smile.
I was going to say, if you're ever listening to this, we do miss you.
Yes, and we'd love to hear you in a future Space Channel 5 game. But yeah, this franchise doesn't get enough love. It was one of those franchises that came out like shortly after Parappa and Guitar Freaks and stuff like that. I played the first Parappa and Jammer Lammy like back in the day, like on PlayStation, but like I did really, really like those games, but I like loved Space Channel 5. And when they threw in Michael Jackson, I was like, oh, sold.
Of course.
It was just too perfect. So the second game actually has a lot more of Michael because they brought him on for like I guess the first game they were like, all right, you could do a couple quick lines or whatever. But then they brought him on. He became like basically a permanent member of the cast.
Yeah.
Where he just shows up and he's like, hey guys, I'm here now.
That's cool.
Yeah. And they like got like motion capture footage, I believe, of his actual dancing too. So
that's awesome. So
forever ingrained in Space Channel 5 history.
Nice.
Yeah. But I don't know, it's a silly, goofy game where you play as Ulala and you it's like a Simon Says kind of game where like the enemies will either shoot at you or up down choo choo, and then you have to repeat it back depending on the motion. So up down, and then like shoot basically is what she would say. So if you like rhythm games and you like 60s 70s like big band and funk and this type of music, definitely check it out. The sequel, in my opinion, is even better. It's a little bit more fleshed out. They throw in some guitar stuff there where you play a guitar. It's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So Naofumi Hataya, one of the composers on this, started off working with Sega on Super Monaco GP in 1990. They did sound effects. They also worked on Golden Axe 2, Sonic CD. They did the ending theme to that. And Nights into Dreams, they were one of the composers on that. We're going to jump way ahead because they've done a ton for Sega, very similar to some of the other composers we talked about. Sonic Generations, they were one of the remix artists. Puyo Puyo Chronicles in 2016, they were one of the arrangers. And the latest game that they've worked on is Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise. They did sound effect production for that, which came out in 2018.
Nice.
Yeah. The other composer, Kenichi Takoi, started off with Daytona USA Deluxe in 1996, working on the music and the remixes. And then Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, they did composition and music and lyrics. Space Channel 5 Part 2, they also did music on that one as well. Sonic Riders in 2006. Sonic Unleashed in 2008. Again, tons and tons of Sega history here. Ended up getting labeled as an additional composer on their last game, which is Sonic Forces in 2017. And Kedwinbin, this is pretty much the only thing that we can relay as far as like video games. Yeah. So, but that's it. That's Space Channel 5. So I figure we'll jump from Space Channel 5 from one Sega franchise to another. What's your pick?
So next up, we're going to hear a song or a track from Chu Chu Rocket. So this came out on the Dreamcast in 1999, and it was not remade. It
like
was ported,
remixed or ported to
the Game Boy Advance in 2001.
Yeah.
The track is called Credits, and it was composed by Tomoya Otani. Welcome back. That was Chu Chu Rocket from the Dreamcast in 1999 or the Game Boy Advance in 2001. The track was called Credits, and it was composed by Tomoya Otani.
Oh, so much nostalgia for this game.
Right?
Love it, love it, love it. Unfortunately, you picked like one of my least favorite songs on this, but still, it's a great track.
That's fair. A lot of the tracks have the same sort of motif throughout them, and as I was listening to the actual OST, because I don't think I've ever actually really sat down and listened to the music in this game. It's just I've played it a lot, and I love this game, but it's just sort of always been background music, and I never really noticed that a lot of the tracks sound very similar. So I picked the credits track because it sounded the most unique out of all of the tracks on this soundtrack.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that actually. This track, I don't know what you'd call it, but like beatbox? I don't know. Like,
yeah,
not quite drum and bass, I would say, but
a little bit. But no, I would agree. Like, it feels like it could be beatbox, except it's not somebody beatboxing. But it's like electronic beatbox.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I really dig the reverse sounds, and if you are wondering why you maybe didn't hear some of what we're talking about, it's because you were probably listening only on one headphone. Make sure you re-listen to the track with headphones.
It is a stereo track.
It is a stereo track, because we're listening to it and you're like, wait a minute, why do I not hear anything on the other ear? And I was like, give it a sec, and it kicked in. So yeah, definitely listen to this one with headphones. But I don't know, I guess like my issue with it is after that that reverse like playing backwards thing kind of plays out, it then kicks into something that just doesn't fit for me with the rest of the track.
That's fair.
So it's not a bad song overall, like once it really kicks into gear, but I just kind of feel like the two patterns that they're working with, the two melodies and combining with the beat, it just doesn't sync up for me.
That's fair.
But I really dig the rest of the soundtrack, especially the motif that they have going on with the
It's very cute and bouncy.
Super bouncy and happy. And it's funny because I also went back and re-listened to the soundtrack because I was going to pick something from it too, but I saw you pick something, so I was like, all right, cool, now I can pick something else. But I listened to the Mouse Mania, when you get the power up for the Mouse Mania, and you get all those mice like flooding in, that version of the song with it like much faster. I always thought that the regular themes sounded like that because when I played this with my brother, like back in the day, he didn't really know what was going on because he was still pretty young, but he was still able to play games with me, and so we would sit down, we would play Chu Chu Rocket, and we had a lot of fun playing, even though I always like beat him, like almost always decimated him, but we would always get the Mouse Mania for whatever reason, like almost always with the power-ups, it always fell onto Mouse Mania. So it became a track that played so often that I thought that it was like the main theme.
Track.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I like went back and listened to it again that I was like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, no, it's not that fast.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
But I had so much fun with this game. I used to dive into the puzzles.
Yep.
And I would play with puzzles, try to solve them all. And this was the very first online experience I ever had with a console game.
Yep. Funny you should say that. This is actually the first Dreamcast online multiplayer game.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense then. Yeah, that's cool.
So, and during the time that it was available, the Sega was actually operating its own servers, so people could play the competitive modes online, and they could also upload their own, like, because in this game you can create your own puzzles.
Right.
And you could upload them to Sega servers.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So for those who don't know what we're talking about and have never heard of or seen Chu Chu Rocket, it is an action puzzle game. It's super cute. The game itself, there's a lot of clones on it you can find on like iOS and in the Google App Store. But basically, there are mice that are released from specific points. They're not called mice, they're called choo-choos.
Right.
And there are cats roaming around some of the maps, and if you run into them, you'll die. The cats are called kapu-kapus. And the whole idea is you're placing arrows to try to guide the mice from where they come out into their rockets, their spaceships, so that they can, get away. very, very minimal storyline in this game. And it's basically just that the Chu Chus are living on a spaceport. The spaceport is invaded by Kapu Kapus one day, and in their frantic state, the Chu Chus begin running around in chaos, and so you have to guide them to the rockets to save them.
Right,
so
right.
Very, very basic story, but it's a lot of fun.
Super fun.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed the single-player puzzle modes. There's also a competitive version where everybody has their own color of Chu Chu.
Yes.
And you have to get to your rocket, and whoever gets the most at the end of a time usually wins.
Yeah.
And then there's the co-op where you both have to work together to save all of these Chu Chus.
Right.
And if you haven't played it, go play it. It's dang adorable.
It's super fun. Grab 3 friends and
Yes.
3 Dreamcast controllers, or 3 additional Dreamcast controllers, and definitely play this multiplayer, because there's no other way to describe it. It's just so much fun. It's a shame because you can't play this one online anymore, if I recall, even though there are fan servers that are being hosted for it.
Yeah.
But you would need a modem in order to play it.
Oh, that's right. You can't use a LAN connection
There are games that do support broadband Ethernet
on the
Dreamcast, because there was an Ethernet adapter that launched.
Oh.
I believe it was around the time of Phantasy Star Online, but I think it's more expensive. It's harder to find, if I recall, for the broadband adapter. I played this back in the day on modem. I remember visiting my mom on like weekends and stuff and playing this game online, and she'd always be like, "You're tying up the phone."
Oh my
you know what I
God.
mean?
Yeah.
So like I had to, play super late at night when my mom wasn't on the phone. So it was a lot of fun.
I mean, I remember those days. we'll not get into that. But
Yeah.
That was a crazy time when you had to use the phone line.
I know, right?
To do anything online. We have one composer on this game, and that is Tomoya Otani. Tomoya started out with this game, Chu Chu Rocket, in 1999, doing the sound creator. And they went on to do music in many a Sega title. We've got Space Channel 5 Part 2, we've got Sonic Advance 3 in 2004, we've got Mario and Sonic the London Olympics 2012, and 2016 as well, Mario and Sonic the Rio games, and most recently Sonic Team Racing in 2019.
Cool. Chu Chu Rocket got a port to the Game Boy Advance, very similar to Space Channel 5, which also saw a port to the Game Boy Advance. The ports for both hold up pretty well for the most part. It's impressive that they got all the voice samples in for Space Channel 5.
I was just going to say, like, Chu Chu Rocket, I can see being very easy to port.
Yeah,
but
I played
Space
it
Channel
back.
5, that's impressive.
I didn't play Space Channel 5 port, but I did play the Chu Chu Rocket port. And it was pretty good. It wasn't as good, but it wasn't bad. So not worth picking up if you could just grab the Chu Chu Rocket on the Dreamcast, but definitely an unforgettable game. So I'm going to move into my next pick, which is Outtrigger. This is a third-person / first-person shooter. Came out on the arcade in 1999 and then followed it up with a Dreamcast release in 2001. The track that we're listening to is You Defeated Me, and it's by Fumio Ito. Hey, you're back to our Dreamcast adventurous journey through all types of music. That was Outrigger, came out on the arcade in 99 and the Dreamcast in 2001. The track was You Defeated Me! And it was by Fumio Ito. So Outrigger is a interesting little title. It's kind of like Sega's answer to Quake 3.
Oh.
Quake 3 Arena.
Okay.
So you can play online with the broadband adapter for up to 6 players. And unfortunately, this was removed from the European release, which is unfortunate.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You can only play it locally in Europe?
Split screen, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can play it in a first-person mode or third-person mode, depending on however you want to play it. But you can pick from one of 4 characters to play as, which is weird because it's up to 6 players. Yeah, strange. You get all different types of guns like laser pulse guns, rifles, sniper guns, all different stuff. There's different modes in the game. There's one mode where you can collect coins. Whoever collects the coins, you get an extra point. It's got a frag system, so much like Deathmatch, where you can go around shooting, your fellow players. So yeah, I don't know if this one has a campaign mode. I don't think it does. I think it's specifically just a multiplayer game. Yeah, I haven't played it. I've been wanting to pick this up for a while, but just haven't found it for the right price.
Yeah, so. Especially if there's no real single player content. I wouldn't spend a ton of money on that.
Yeah. So did you have a Dreamcast back in the day?
I did not.
You did not?
I had a few friends that had one, so I never really felt the need to get one.
Okay.
I was very much growing up just a one console person. I had an NES, no Genesis. I had an SNES, no whatever was competing with the
Genesis.
SNES. And then, I had a PlayStation, not an N64, PS2, not a GameCube, or it goes on and on. But it wasn't until the last maybe 10 years or so. So in my 20s is when I started collecting more things. So now I have a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not going to go through my collection because that's just not worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't really have multiple consoles until much later in life.
I was a Nintendo fanboy through and through, never considered owning a Sega console. NES all the way, Super NES all the way, and N64, and actually PlayStation I got first, and then I got an N64. I sold my PlayStation to get a Dreamcast, and then I sold my Dreamcast to get a Game Boy Advance, and then I didn't sell any more of my stuff. I stopped doing that.
Yeah.
So I kind of got out of trading in consoles at that point. That was just kind of my way because I didn't really have a lot of income. So I was like, all right, well, my mom or dad they're willing to give me some money to put towards the system. Where can I get the rest of the money and still be able to buy a game and a second controller and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
I remember getting the Dreamcast probably about 6 months after it came out. And the only reason why I bought it was because they announced Castlevania Resurrection.
Oh, that's right.
And so I bought it with the contingency that they would release Castlevania Resurrection, and they didn't. What I like about the system is that they really took risks, and they tried to create a lot of really creative, fun games that you wouldn't normally see on a Nintendo console. So Fumio Ito started off working with Sega's Super GT in 1996. Later on did Virtua Fighter 3TB, which was on the Dreamcast. Shenmue 2, which never came out on the Dreamcast here in America, unfortunately. Virtua Quest in 2004, and Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast, which we talked about fairly recently. And their latest game, they're credited for Shenmue 1 and 2 in 2018 because they were the original composer. That got a HD re-release.
Right.
But for latest games, I guess you could say Hatsune Miku, Project Eva, Future Tone in 2017. They were credited for sound on that.
Nice.
So, yeah. All right.
Cool. So,
what you got for me?
Yeah, so we're gonna relax for a moment here and listen to something a little more on the chill side. This is from Sega Marine Fishing, which came out on the Dreamcast in the arcade in 2000. The track is Coral Reef, and unfortunately, we were not able to find a composer on this. So this is by Mr. or Mrs. Unknown.
Do you experience late night bloating? Have you ever felt the world is crashing down around you? The pull of anxiety reaching for your inner soul? Are there times where you get the wiggles in your pants? Do you not so secretly pine for the late 90s and early 2000s? Do you have frosted tips? Are Offspring and Bad Religion some of your favorite bands of all time? Are you a Sega fan pining for the return of the blue blur on only Sega hardware? You need Dreamcastinox. Dreamcastinox is a supplement that tricks your mind into thinking that Sega never left the console wars. Pining for a Dreamcast 2? With Dreamcastinox, you'll have implanted memories of playing Crazy Taxi 5, Skies of Arcadia Sky Pirates, Phantasy Star Online 5 The Star Patrol, Space Channel 5 Part 12, and Streets of Rage 4, all on the Sega Dreamcast 6. It's thinking? You're dang skippy it is. It's a darn genius according to your mind. Cargo shorts aren't shunned anymore, music is still tolerable, and Michael Jackson is still alive.
Hi there, I'm Michael Jackson. Thanks to Dreamcastinox, you literally saved me so I could work on Sonic Adventure 7. Thank you.
Shamona!
And Nintendo? They're back in third place, where they belong, according to you. Yep, that's the power of Dreamcastinox. Get your dream on today. Get your doctor's permission before seeing a psychiatrist, before seeing a psychologist, before seeing a Dreamweaver in order to get a prescription for Dreamcastinox. Side effects include wishing friends and Seinfeld were back on TV, mistakenly calling your wife oolala in bed, colossal diarrhea, rectal printing, poop jokes gone too far, headaches, drooling, savage yogurt adventures, moving to Utah, cancer, and death. Visit www.dreamcastinox.gov for more info.
It's thinking.
You're listening to XVGM Radio. Welcome back from that very bouncy fishing trip. Yes. So that was Coral Reef, which was a track from Sega Marine Fishing on the Dreamcast and the arcade in 2000. And the composer, as I said before, is unfortunately unknown.
Wah wah.
Yes, but it is a really fun little track.
Yeah. I don't know what that instrument is.
The sitar?
It is a sitar.
I think.
That's what it is.
So, yeah. There's a couple instruments that it could be, but as far as I can tell, it's probably a sitar.
Yeah, it sounds like
the
a
quality of that sound.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Really stands out to me. But I really was enjoying the vibe. I mean, it's a very kind of refreshing, relaxing kind of track, but it still has a good beat to it, and it keeps you, keeps you in the game.
Yeah, it loops quite a bit, but it's not so repetitive that it is annoying. Like
Right.
a lot of really short loops can just get annoying, and you want to just sort of get through the stage.
For sure.
And it's important in games like this, like fishing games, where half of the game is just waiting for a fish to bite, like real life.
Yes.
You need to have music that's not going to annoy your players,
Like in real life.
like in real life. Exactly. That's why when I go fishing, I only bring 30-second loops.
And Sega Marine Fishing.
No, I
use the Sega Marine Fishing as
I fish
bait.
alone.
Oh, okay.
So I bring really short loops that nobody will fish with me.
Oh, okay.
This is a lie. I've never been fishing in my life.
That's why you take Sega Marine Fishing with you.
Yes.
On your trips, and you use that as bait, and the fish eat that.
Oh, I was gonna say no. I just play it on my boat, and people ask, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm fishing." Well, where's your fishing pole? It's in the game.
Right here, jerk.
Why don't you mind your beeswax?
Yeah.
Go fish somewhere else.
God.
Anyway.
That guy.
Sega Marine Fishing, I mean, it is a fishing video game. There are plenty of these out there. This game is actually a direct sequel to Sega Bass Fishing.
And you can use the controller.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, it has that nifty fishing rod controller
Right.
for the Dreamcast, which was kind of neat. I don't know how many games actually used that that thing.
I'm just wondering how that even works. Is it kind of like a Wiimote where it like picks up your... Because I've seen them before, but I've never really actually played.
Yeah, that's a
One.
good question. I've never used that controller.
Yeah.
I would imagine because I don't think you need that controller to play this game.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Huh.
Yeah, it can be played using the Dreamcast Fishing Rod controller. It's not required.
Right.
So there has to be something in the controller, like it's got to be a key press to cast your line.
Right.
And instead of having like a motion sensor in the rod, it probably has just like sort of a weighted switch, so when you pull back, it flips to one side and you go forward.
It recognizes
to the
it,
side.
right. Yeah.
But
that's
either way, it's really I've seen videos of people playing with it, and it seems to work fairly well.
That's
so
cool.
It's really cool that they made a controller that lets you feel like you're fishing.
I've heard there's people that like try to beat games with
yeah.
with a fishing rod.
That's like people that try to beat games with the DDR pad.
Yeah. It's always funny.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as far as the game itself goes, I don't know what to say about the game other than, you want to, pick the right lures and entice fish to bite your...
Pick the right lures?
Lure, L-U-R-E, lure.
It sounded like you said lore.
Oh, sorry.
Pick the right book on fishing.
Yeah, and you attach the book to your hook.
Yeah.
And then you got to make sure you have the right bookworm in there.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Anyway.
I hate you so much. How are you going to make that joke?
Very carefully.
Very carefully.
Not carefully enough. But
yes.
I'm not big on fishing games myself, but I have played them just nothing to do or just want to, like, relax. And these games are very relaxing. They put you to sleep.
I hate myself for laughing at that joke. All right.
But, yeah.
I just feel gross now.
Well, I will let you feel better by allowing you to move on to the next game.
All right.
Have anything to do with talking about this composer.
That's true. So, Sword of the Berserk is our next game. It is a Dreamcast exclusive, which came out in 2000. This song is Adhesion to Blood, and it's by Susumu Hirasawa. you dripping beads of sweat after listening to that?
I mean, I feel like I am. I feel like I'm bleeding out my eyes.
That was Sword of the Berserk, the Dreamcast exclusive on the year 2000, which is when it was released. That was Adhesion to Blood, and that was by Susumu Hirasawa. I love this song so much. It's so good.
I'm not super surprised. It feels like there are some really interesting and potentially metal influences to some of this, and it was a trip. I am trying really hard not to say bad things about it because I didn't hate it exactly.
Okay.
But I was not prepared for that. I will just say I've not played this game. I've seen it, and I do want to play it because for one, Berserk is pretty awesome.
Yeah. So this is my first experience with the Berserk franchise.
Oh, really? Was it your intro?
Yep. This was my introduction, and it made me a fan. I thought it was super cool. I didn't really watch that much anime. Like, that was when I was just starting to get into anime. So I was watching stuff like Vampire Hunter D, Venus Wars, Iria, Zerum the Animation, stuff like that, which was on the Sci-Fi Channel. So I'd never really seen an anime series. I'd only watched anime movies.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know what Berserk was. I just saw the character and the one eye closed and everything, and this big beefy dude with a ginormous sword, and I was like, this looks amazing. I need to get this game. So I picked it up when it came out, and I remember really enjoying it back then, and it hasn't aged well, in my opinion. It's not a bad game, but my biggest complaint is that your sword is so big that it hits everything. So this game starts off with very open areas. So it's not that bad when you first start playing it because you're like, oh, I can swing my sword and pretty much kill everybody with this ginormous sword. And then as you go through the game a little bit later, you start going into these towns and areas that have like really narrow corridors. And I remember constantly hitting my sword against like walls and barriers and all sorts of stuff like that. And it would like bounce off and I would get attacked and I would die. So later on in the game, it became a very frustrating experience. But this game was kind of unique that it used QuickTime events like right around the same time as Shenmue. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and I want to go back and like replay this because I haven't sat down with it recently. I remember like maybe booting it up like maybe 6-7 years ago and playing just that first level and just remembering how much I enjoyed it, but I haven't sat through and like beaten the game now that I am a Berserk fan.
Yeah.
So Susumu Hirasawa mostly started off working on soundtracks for anime and stuff like that. He's actually an older gentleman, so he's been in the game since I'd say like the 70s or so. Been on various different labels as well. Has quite a history with anime. Not so much games, pretty much Sword of the Berserk, and then followed it up with the opening and ending theme for the PS2 Berserk game, which was Millennium Falcon Arc Seimasenki no Sho in 2004. And then final game that they created music for was a game called Runer, which came out in 2017. Yeah, that's it. So, love me some Berserk. So, yeah, it's kind of neat that this was my first exposure to the franchise.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And I still want to check the game out at some point.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't seem like it stands up, it seemed, I remember when it came out, it seemed like a really cool game.
And this is a little bit of a side note, but Berserk is fantastic. If you dig anime, get into it.
Yes.
It's got this like dark fantasy vibe, but at the same time, there's these scenes in Berserk, especially that first anime, and even when they retold it in that Golden Egg movie arc. Yep. There's some scenes that stick with you that are so gut-wrenching and terrible and awful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you can't help but watch. Like, it's an addictive series to get into. So it's like Game of Thrones, but anime.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So it looks like we're getting another call on the request line. Let's go ahead and shoot that over and see what we got.
Okay.
Hi there, it's Eddie Falcon.
The boxer?
Well, used to be. I think people might know my adventures looking for the Power Stones better.
Oh yeah, what can we do for you?
I heard you were doing something for the Dreamcast birthday. Can you play a track from Power Stone 2 for me?
Sure, how about Extra Stage 2?
Perfect, that's just what I was thinking. Nice and jazzy.
You got it. What's your favorite video game music podcast, by the way?
XVGM Radio.
Welcome back to our Dreamcast birthday extravaganza special. That was Power Stone 2 as requested by Mr. Edward Falcon. The track was called Extra Stage 2. It was released on the Dreamcast and in arcades in the year 2000, and the track was composed by Tetsuya Shibata.
Indeed.
So jazzy.
Oh,
I love
so
that upright
good.
bass.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. Oh, it's just so that's so relaxing.
Reminds me of some stuff that we played way back on episode 3 on the board and card games.
Just gonna say that, board and card games.
Yeah.
This is not like a lot of the other stuff in this soundtrack.
No.
Power Stone 2 is just like Power Stone 1 is a fighting game. It's a 3D fighting game, so it's sort of like a 3/4 isometric view, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Maybe sort of like Tekken. I never really played Tekken, but you're
I'd say it's more like if you took Smash Brothers and made it like kind of sort of isometric.
Yeah,
a little bit.
That's fair. The characters are kind of short and fat and cute, and they
Chibi style.
Yeah,
as the kids call it these days.
Oh, that's right. It is chibi style. It is a fighting game, a little different than some of the other fighting games you might be familiar with if you play like Street Fighter or Smash. It's probably closer to Smash than any of the others. But you've got a button to jump, a button for throwing. So if you run into a character, you hit the throw button, you can throw them. You've got a button to pick up or drop items, and then just your attack. And you have different attacks if you're on the ground and you're in the air. And as you're playing through the game, different things will just appear, like different items. You can pick up like a rocket launcher and fire it at people, or the Power Stones will appear. And if you get, I believe it's 3 Power Stones, you transform.
I think it's once you get the 3,
get the third, yeah,
and then you transform into like a super version of yourself.
Exactly, like Mr. Falcon turns into, I forget what they call him, but he basically looks like a British Iron Man,
right?
Like sort of like the old style Iron Man costume.
Yeah.
And then when you're transformed, you have 2 like super attacks that you can do by pressing a combination of buttons, and they're usually fairly devastating. There's also a decent chance that they can be dodged, so it doesn't guarantee anything in the game. But there's also things that'll appear like chairs. You can pick up a chair and you can throw the chair.
Yeah, there's like knives and bombs and all sorts of melee weapons and stuff like that you can use. So yeah, it's pretty cool. The second game kind of changed things up a little bit in terms of perspective. Yeah. And there was a little bit more melee action, if I recall.
I think a little bit more, yeah. There were definitely some changes between the first and second game, and I've played them both so much that they've kind of blended together, so I couldn't actually tell you off the top of my head what the changes were between the two. But it's a really fun little game.
I feel like Power Stone 1 was a little more flexible with the controls. Like, it was a little bit easier to pick up and play, and at the same time, I feel like there was a better response from Power Stone 1, whereas Power Stone 2, not so much. I mean, the controls were still good, it's just they weren't as good. They didn't flow as well to me.
Like, I felt like there was a lag?
Yeah, I just feel like your characters were slower.
Slower, okay.
A little bit more sluggish.
The game played slower, yeah.
Yeah, the gameplay's a little slower, whereas the first one, it's a lot faster. There's a little bit more arcade-like. So,
yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah. So, but I do really enjoy both games for the most part. They're a lot of fun.
So, Tatsuya Shibata.
Yes, tell me about them.
Started doing sub-music compose in Street Fighter Alpha 3 in 1998. A lot of this stuff is really good music composition. So we'll go Darkstalkers 3 in 1998,
yes.
Resident Evil Outbreak 2004, Devil May Cry 2 in 2003.
Plasma Sword, which was the sequel to Star Gladiator that came out on the Dreamcast as well. I was this close to picking a track from it.
Nice. Actually, a lot of the Devil May Cry stuff. Devil May Cry 2, Devil May Cry 3, Devil May Cry 4, Resident Evil 5 in 2009. They were the lead sound manager. And then we'll just bump up to the top here. Most recent audio credit is actually for Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition in 2018. They're listed under Unique Note Company Limited. I guess they moved on over to there.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's move into my next pick. This is
excited.
A pretty obscure game, but I really dig it. It's Omicron, the Nomad Soul. This came out on the Dreamcast and the PC in 1999 and 2000, respectively. The track is Fight with Astaroth, and this track specifically is by Xavier Despas, but the rest of the compositions for certain tracks are by David Bowie and Reeves Gabriels. Hey, you're back, and that was Omicron, the Nomad Soul. This came out on the Dreamcast and the PC in 1999 and 2000. This track was called Fight with Astaroth, and it was by Xavier Despas. Some other tracks on the soundtrack, which we're going to get into in just a second, were by David Bowie, the late, great David Bowie,
yes,
and Reeves Gabriels. Yes. So, I don't have any experience with this game gameplay-wise, but you do.
Only a little bit.
Only a little bit.
So, I got this game for free on Steam, I think, very recently after David Bowie passed away,
Right.
there was either a sale or they were giving it away because he had ties to the game.
Yeah.
And it looks crazy. Like, I don't know if I would say this aged well because the graphics are fairly old. It's from the early 2000s, so you've got some kind of sharp polygons in there. But overall, I mean, I grew up in that era, so I often can very easily look past a lot of that stuff.
Oh, sure.
It's not that bad as far as I'm concerned. The voice acting was pretty good. The game itself looks just crazy.
Yeah.
It's all like super futuristic and dark. I feel like the track that you just played is a very good audible representation of the visuals, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah, I could see what you mean.
industrial, grungy, grimy. It just...
Yeah, no, I really dig sound-wise on this track that like hammer sound
Yeah,
that
yes.
that is used in the percussion, and just that just that beating of that beat down. This track it goes up to a certain point, and I want it to go to that next level, but it never does, and that's my only disappointment with the track. Because I kind of wanted it to go one step more.
Yeah.
But it never does, and it drops back down. And you're like, aw, come on, track. You could do it. Like, you can get up and mosey on down to Funky Town.
Yeah, you're going there.
I don't know. But I'm really fascinated by this game. I haven't played it, but it is a game that supposedly is very beyond its time. Like, it was
very ahead of its time, yeah.
way ahead of its time. It's an adventure game where you are playing from the perspective of this one specific character that you start off with, and he is voiced very well. All the characters are voiced excellently, so you kind of believe this world that you're in. At that point, like, a lot of games didn't have a lot of like voice mixed with like movement of the lips.
Oh yeah.
And this game does. So like, you'll watch a cutscene and the voice, they'll be moving their mouth with the, it won't be like, won't be perfect, but, they're moving their mouth and saying words. And back then, that was like the sort of thing where if I saw it in a game, I was like blown away. You know what I mean?
Because we're used to games where it's just like the mouth flaps when things are talking, and it's like, that's good enough.
Or not even.
Oh yeah.
Like in-game cutscenes where you have like a character and they have like those hands that like just look like mittens. You know what I mean? And like their face doesn't move or show any kind of reaction when they talk. They just kind of show up and they're like, we have to do something, but they're like just waving their mitten hands around, So
it's like if they added voice acting to Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But so this game, they had David Bowie come on, and he did 10 original songs along with Reeves Gabrels, who is he's a guitarist, is a member of the British band The Cure since around like 2012. But yeah, he's mostly worked with David Bowie from the late 80s to the late 90s in a band called Tin Machine. That was like David Bowie's band.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of David Bowie and his music. I am not a super fan. So I don't know every single song. I don't own every single album.
Right.
I've got maybe a few handfuls of albums or whatever, 1 or 2 albums.
And some singles.
And stuff like that. And like, I appreciate him as a musician. This is his like first foray into video games, if you will. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. I guess they were planning on doing a PlayStation version, but it was about 70% done, and then it just got canceled. And then they were going to move it over to PS2, and then it got canceled.
Yeah.
So
they were going to do a sequel, too, and they ended up scrapping the sequel and instead went with Heavy Rain.
Yeah, because the person who created this was David Cage.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff. Definitely a cool track.
Yeah.
All right, so what you got for me?
All right, so my last pick of the night, we are going to have one more track after this. We're going to leave folks with an outro, but my last personal pick of the night is from Phantasy Star Online, a 2001 Dreamcast release. The track is called Can Still See the Light, ending theme, wind orchestra version. Rather, this is the wind orchestra version. And it was composed by Hideaki Kobayashi and Fumi Kumatani. Welcome back from that track. That was Phantasy Star Online, which was a 2001 Dreamcast game. The track was called Can Still See the Light, Ending Theme. It was the wind orchestra version, and it was composed by Hideaki Kobayashi and Fumie Kumatani.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Nice little orchestral track there. Really bombastic and fun.
Yeah.
Kind
I feel
of
like
lighthearted.
I feel like my tracks in this episode have gone from sort of bigger and more in your face to more sort of subdued and laid back. Like Sega Marine Fishing was a little upbeat for a fishing track, but that, and then we came down to the Power Stone track, which was very jazzy, and now this one, which is just sort of more like orchestral classical.
It's kind of one of the benefits of the Sega Dreamcast and doing an episode on a system like this. Had the advantage of Red Book audio, of course, but also just had a great variety of games, game styles, and compositions.
Yeah, definitely. But
So I've never played Phantasy Star, period. I've never played any Phantasy Star games. All I know is that there were 4 games that came out total. Initially, there was 1 on the Master System, and then there was 3 on the Genesis.
right, yep.
And then I know that there was a bunch of online games that came out, kind of, sort of, and that's all I know. So you'll have to fill in the blanks.
No worries. So you don't need to have played any of the Phantasy Star games from the previous consoles to get into this one, because this has nothing to do with any of them.
Oh, okay.
So it's the setting is the Phantasy Star like universe setting, but this is not a continuation of Phantasy Star 1 through 4.
Right.
It doesn't pick up any of those storylines. Interestingly enough, it was developed as sort of a killer app for the Dreamcast. So Yuji Naka was the game's producer, and he wanted something that was going to utilize like all the parts of the Dreamcast, the modem and all the graphics processing, like all this stuff, and just make something really cool. And in Japan, MMOs and computer gaming didn't really take off in the same way that it did here.
Sure.
And he wanted to bring something like that to the consoles so that Japan could get into something similar.
Yeah.
So they were developing what was basically like an MMO. Some of the concept art for it, there was a dragon that somebody had designed, and so Naka had actually served as the main programmer on Phantasy Star 1 and 2, so he was already tied to that. And when he saw this dragon that somebody had created for this game, it reminded him a lot of that. So he then talked to Sega, and they decided, okay, so the setting is going to be Phantasy Star, but it's not going to be linked to any of the games. It's not going to be that story.
Sure.
So they created this whole thing. Originally, they were designing this game under the working title Third World, and then, like I said, after seeing this dragon, I was just like, oh, this looks really cool. It looks like Phantasy Star. They decided to go with that, and then they made it into Phantasy Star Online.
Right.
What differentiates this from other MMOs is you can play it offline, so you could just play the story that was created for the game by yourself, or you could jump online where you're sort of thrown into a lobby where you could be with friends, you can meet with other people, exchange cards to know when other people are online, and then get your group together and then go on these missions. And your missions, like, it's instanced. If you know anything about MMOs, that's the term that they use. So like nobody else can come in, like people can't come in and mess with you or anything. It's your own instance of whatever this quest is. So it was online, it was multiplayer, but it wasn't like a multiplayer open world like World of Warcraft or EverQuest and any of those things. So it was a really interesting game. I have played maybe about an hour of this game. This is another thing. I have my friend who was big into the Dreamcast, big into the Phantasy Star series as well, got this and loved it. I never realized that until just now that this wasn't part of, it wasn't like directly tied to the other games.
Right.
But like, we were hanging out, he gave me a controller, said, hey, create a character, check it out. And it was a lot of fun. If I had a Dreamcast, I probably would have actually picked this game up and lost a lot of hours into it.
Yeah.
But it's really neat.
This is another one of those games that you can still play online. So if you wanted to, you could.
That's super cool.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, I know the Phantasy Star Online fan base is like rabid. And I believe that there was a game that recently came out that is getting ported to the Xbox One. So...
Yeah. Well, I mean, this game actually got picked up and ported to the GameCube,
right?
With a whole bunch of added content.
Yeah.
Like they were releasing, missions and quests and stuff online for this game when it was on the Dreamcast. And when they brought it to the GameCube, they sort of compiled all that stuff into it. And I want to say it was called like Phantasy Star Online Episodes 1 and 2.
1 and 2,
like
yeah, I remember
and it's just
that.
all that content put together.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure like the GameCube has online functionality.
Yeah, it does. It has a broadband adapter as well.
So it was online there too. So
yeah. It's neat. It's neat that you can still go back and relive the infancy of online gaming through consoles.
Yeah. And this was one of the first, it might have been the first multiplayer online type of game like this for our console.
Yeah, because I think EverQuest was on PS2, but it was...
Oh,
yeah, I think it was on PS2, but it was online, but it didn't come out until later.
Oh, gotcha.
So, yeah, it was like maybe 2002 or 2003.
Yeah, same thing with Final Fantasy 11.
Yep. Yeah, that was way later.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's cool.
The composers on this, Hideaki Kobayashi, started as a sound creator in Romania number 203 in 2000. That was a Dreamcast and PS2 game. It was some kind of a simulator of some sort. But they did music composition on Sonic the Hedgehog in 2006, Sonic and the Secret Rings in 2007. Looks like they stuck with Sega forever, going all the way up to Sonic Colors in 2010 music composition, and Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games in 2013. That was the Sochi 2014 Olympics.
And we already talked about Fumiko Mitani. So.
We did.
Yeah, so we're good.
We are good there.
Final thoughts on the Dreamcast. What is your nostalgic memories or any final thoughts that you have on the system?
So I enjoyed the system when it was out. The controller, for one, always threw me for a loop. And in fact, it still does. Every time I go to sit down and play Chu Chu Rocket or something, I'm just like, how do you use this thing again? But there were so many cool things about it. Like, I thought the VMUs were really nifty for the couple of games that used them.
Yeah.
The controller itself, aside from being weird, once you understand like how it's supposed to sit, it's fairly intuitive.
My biggest problem with the controller was the analog stick. I didn't have a problem with the clicky buttons on for the analogs, but the actual analog stick, I wanted it to stick out a little bit more. The fact that it was like a
it was
nub.
kind of short.
Yeah, it was short, and it was close to the actual system. So playing anything utilizing that stick was kind of difficult.
You don't get a whole lot of precision.
Right.
It's not very long. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Other than that, I saw a bit of the Dreamcast when I was in college. Like I said, mostly for people that had emulators and stuff. I always found it to be a pretty nifty system, and I never really understood why exactly it failed, other than the other consoles just performed better or had better exclusives. I know we have friends that are on both sides of the fence on this. Some that are just like, no, it's garbage, I don't care about it, and some people that are like, no, this is like a lost gem.
Yeah. The reason why the Dreamcast failed was mostly due to the fact that PlayStation had already built up a brand big enough that people were willing to wait for the next PlayStation console. So Sega had kind of ruined themselves with the Saturn. It was a total flop in the US, mostly because of the PlayStation just killed it coming right out the gate. And so at that point, they kind of made this last grasp at a more casual audience. And personally, while I like the Saturn, I feel like the games on the Dreamcast are a lot more casual and a lot more like user-friendly.
Yeah.
But the Dreamcast did not do well once the PS2 was announced. That's kind of the beginning of the end.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I forgot. I actually had heard some of the stories of like Sega's mishandling of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And, like, Sega of America versus Sega of Japan. There was a lot of stuff there that
never on the same page.
Yep.
Actually, Sega of America renamed themselves Sega of America Dreamcast during that era. And even like in the advertising for the Dreamcast, they never really put Sega's name on it. It was always like just the Dreamcast. And that was them trying to wipe the idea of Sega being a failure from, American audiences. And
interesting.
So, yeah, it's one way to put it. But it's a shame because the system, I feel like, was very underrated and did have a lot of great games, had a lot of great ports as well, and was really ahead of its time. What with the VMUs and also with the online capabilities and games that were basically arcade perfect. I mean, you had a little bit of that during the Saturn era, but I really truly feel like the Dreamcast took it to the next level. So, what was your favorite song of the podcast?
So, my favorite track, I think I'm actually going to go with The Fight with Astaroth, the Omicron Nomad Soul track, but a very close second is the Extra Stage 2 from Power Stone 2.
Okay.
Just the industrial in that Omicron track was was very pleasing to me. And even though it didn't sort of like reach that extra level that you were talking about, it kind of scratched the occasional industrial itch that I get. And then the Power Stone 2 track is just, it was very smooth, very jazzy, and I found it to be relaxing.
Sure. I got to go with that Sword of the Berserk track. It is right up my alley, and it was kind of a hidden gem that when I heard it, I was like, whoa, what is this? So I definitely dig that track. And for runner-up, I don't know. I think I'm going to go with Outrigger. I was really feeling Outrigger.
That was a pretty cool track.
Space Channel 5, of course, is a nostalgic classic for me personally, so that one is up there as well. You know, even your jazzy Sega Marine Fishing track really caught me kind of off guard. That was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Alex Messenger, Scott McElhone, Cam Worma, Chris Murray, Kung Fu Carlito of the Heroes 3 podcast, Jordan and Anson Davis, Chris Myers, Jeremy Rutz, Peter Panda, Brad Austin, and the Autistic Gamer 89. If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/XVGMradio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you and access to our monthly live shows.
You can visit our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show.
If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com.
And if you'd like what you've heard, please consider giving us a rating on iTunes and a review.
You can also join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at www.facebook.com/groups/XVGMradio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks, or just talking about the podcast itself.
And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle for both of those sites is @XVGMradio.
If you don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique, check us out on our Discord group chat. Links will be in the show notes.
We also wanted to mention real quick that we are going to be at Retro World Expo this year in 2019.
Yes, RWX 2019.
Yes. So this is a really fun expo that takes place in Connecticut, our home state. You can come and check it out. It is still relatively inexpensive when it comes to buying tickets for this. It is a weekend show, so it starts on September 28th and it runs through the 29th, so Saturday and Sunday. Yep. The show hours are from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. for Saturday and 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday. If you have kids and they are 10 and under, they get in for free, as long as you have a paid ticket purchase as an adult. So if you want to save a little money on that, you can enter in promo code RWX2019 and you can save a little money. You got to do that, of course, before the show. So buy your tickets in advance.
Online. Yep.
Online. We will have a panel. I don't know when the time is going to be, but I can tell you it is going to be about the Super NES versus the Sega Genesis, talking about the sound chips, the hardware,
the games,
and also, of course, sharing some wonderful tunes for you guys. So if you are local to Connecticut or if you are traveling in, be there or be square.
Yes. See you there.
So next episode, we've got some special guests. We are going to be sitting down chatting with Super Thrash Brothers. They are a video game music cover band.
Metal cover,
heavy metal, yeah. And they are super goofy guys. We've seen them twice now, and they are really cool. So we're looking forward to sitting down, chatting with them. We're going to be sharing some of their tracks, and then we're going to be picking out of their medleys, because they mostly do medleys.
Yep.
We're going to be picking our favorite songs out of each medley that they've chosen for us.
Yep. Sort of similar to what we did with the Lame Genie episode.
Kind of.
Except, like, Lame Genie, they did covers of individual songs,
right,
compared, and with this one, we're sort of comparing our favorite pieces to their metal covers.
Right.
But they are a lot of fun. If you have not heard of Super Thrash Brothers, go check them out before listening to that episode and just get acquainted, because they have some really, really awesome stuff.
For sure. So, we're going to leave you with an outro track. This is a little bit somber. It's to remember the Sega Dreamcast. We did something kind of similar for the Ryu Umamoto episode way back on episode 9. But this is from Skies of Arcadia. We couldn't help but play a track from this to close us out. This came out on the Dreamcast and the GameCube in 2000 and 2003, respectively. And the song is called Theme of Loneliness, and it's by Yutaka Minobe and Tatsuyuki Maeda. So go ahead and listen to that track. That will close out the episode. And we want to thank you so much for enjoying the Dreamcast birthday party that we've thrown today. We hope we'll still be talking about this console in the next 20 years after that.
Yeah.
When we're all old and gray. So this is Mike
And Justin.
signing off for XVGM Radio.
But it wasn't like a multiplayer open world like World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft.
World of
World of Warcraft.